Back when I first launched the channel, I did a review of the AT-Games SEGA Mega Drive. It's a retro throwback console which acts as a reproduction of the original Mega Drive, with some built-in games. Now, I only did a written review, and all I got on video was a record of how bad the sound and visual quality was. And then I did nothing with it. Because to be fair, at the time, I was still working for Sega, and it wouldn't really have been a good idea to bash a product that uses its license. In fact, I didn't even release the written review until after I'd left the company. But then again, I never touched on any of the alternatives, because let's face it, if you grew up playing Sega, there are many different ways to play the games that made your childhood, but we'll get onto that later. For now, let's focus on, well, actually, this. This is the new AT-Games Mega Drive. It's meant to be the 25th anniversary Sonic edition, so they've changed a few things, but we'll get onto the differences between this and the old one in a bit. Whether it's this version or the earlier version, on paper, this console is a bargain. It boasts 80 built-in games, and unlike the NES Classic Edition, for example, that list of games can be expanded, as it will also play original Mega Drive games as it has a cartridge slot on top. Not only that, but can also use original Mega Drive controllers as well. Although you do get two wireless 6-button controllers packed in. It sounds like a great deal, but it's not necessarily all that it seems. Let's start with the games. Yes, you do get 80 games built in, but only 40 of them are actually Mega Drive games. Now, in principle, 40 games isn't bad at all, especially if the titles are good, and they are. The pack-in games include Alex Kidd, Golden Axe, Columns, Sonic 1 and 2, Sonic and Knuckles, Streets of Rage 1, 2 and 3, and Ristar. This one, however, gets rid of games like Streets of Rage in favour of adding in the Mortal Kombat series. The other 40 games are what are referred to as bonus games, essentially cheap arcade-style games that presumably AT-Games owns the right to and thought they would throw in for good measure. But if anything, it just cheapens the product, especially with games like Meat Loaf Rotation. 40 first-party Mega Drive games, or in this case 40 best-selling games, is a good selling point. 80 games but only half of them are Mega Drive games isn't. And those controllers, well, yes, you do get two wireless 6-button controllers packed in, which is pretty good. The only thing is the wireless is controlled by infrared, which means that it works most of the time, but is quite easily disrupted. Anyone that's ever found themselves stretching or twisting to get the TV remote to work will recognise what I mean by that. But it's nice that you get the option to use an original controller. It adds a bit of authenticity and allows you to decide which that you prefer. So, let's talk about the games. You do get some great games packed in with this console, and you have the ability to pick up original cartridges and play them directly through the system. That being said, I know that not all games are compatible. At this point, I'm not sure if there's a definitive list anywhere that categorises whether a game is playable on the system or not, but the majority of games will work just fine. Technically speaking anyway. That is to say, they'll play, but they won't necessarily play well. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to do the first stage of Sonic the Hedgehog using an original hardware Mega Drive 2 and an original cartridge. It's perfect. I think my console is a little beaten up these days, and you might argue that it's been done better on classic collection releases, but, well, this is how it was back in the 90s. Now, let's play the AT-Games version of Sonic the Hedgehog. The controller doesn't work. Wait, hang on. Okay, wait, where's the other one? Where's the other one? This one doesn't work either. I am doing it right, aren't I? Player 1. Infrared working. Controllers don't work. Where's the manual gone? Where's it? Okay. Here we go. Press the keys on the wireless controllers to observe the power indicator light blinks. I did that. Orient the wireless controller's infrared transmitter at the console's IR receiver and they will connect automatically. Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that one. When we did it last time, the controllers worked, didn't they? Anyway, I guess I'll just have to plug in an original controller, but the original controller doesn't have a menu button like the 6-button controllers do.
SEGA!
Yeah, the audio is terrible. It's oddly slow. If you're listening with one earphone in, you may not have even heard any sound at all, and that's because it doesn't split the audio for left and right channels. So if your TV uses composite, you'll only get sound out of one speaker. The gameplay is fine, I guess, although I'm having to use an original controller as the provided one doesn't work. But the poor sound isn't just with the built-in versions of the games. It plays exactly the same when you use an original cartridge, so it's not even like you could just use this as a replacement Mega Drive console and ignore the built-in games. It's an annoyance either way. It's a shame because there's some great games on here. Some of them are even getting pricey, like Ristar, but, well, in essence, it's useless. One last thing though. Can it play import games? Now I'm assuming no, but then again the original hardware sometimes played all sorts of games. I've managed to get European EA cartridges to play on an American Nomad, and Sonic games seem to play regardless of the region. So I've got a Japanese and an American version of Sonic here, and I'm going to try them out. Yep, that works fine, apart from the same audio issues. And the American one? Yep, that too. There is also a handheld version of this console, but obviously you can't plug cartridges in, so they instead included an SD card slot so that you can, quote, download more games. It does say that, doesn't it? They're encouraging you to download ROMs, aren't they? This is a licensed product that's encouraging you to download illegal ROMs. I mean, you could obviously do the same with a home console and a flash card, but you don't get actively encouraged by the manufacturer. Twats. While the At Games Mega Drive is technically the most comprehensive attempt at creating a retro Mega Drive plug-and-play, there have been loads of lesser attempts, so let's take a look at a few of them now. First up is the Radica system. Now this is one of two versions released which are essentially the same system just with different games, but these suffer from their own audio issues, as you'll hear. The down button doesn't work. So the build quality is good then. I'll just play Sonic then. It sounds a little bit like the audio is peaking, but there are ways of modifying it so that it plays better. Now I'm not very good at explaining it, but the 8-bit guy is much better than I am, so I'm going to put a link to his video in the description below. There is also this thing, which is made by, well actually I don't know. Some of these say At Games on them, but this one says Millennium. The games are built into the controller, but for some reason they didn't make it look like a Mega Drive controller. They instead went for this weird yellow, slightly Xbox looking thing. Either way, the gameplay is okay-ish. The sound is terrible and there's only a few games to choose from. But I think I like the controller though, and you do get two of them, so you can plug one into the other for multiplayer games. Mega Drive collections and specific game collections like this Sonic collection, for example, have also been released numerous times across several consoles. This one, for example, in the Xbox 360 and PS3 includes Sonic 1, 2 and 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Streets of Rage 1, 2 and 3, Echo the Dolphin 1 and 2, Golden Axe 1, 2 and 3, Alex Kidd, Columns, Altered Beast. In fact, there's more Mega Drive games on this than on the At Games console, plus unlockable games too. Now this is the part that requires some full disclosure notes. I should say that I did used to work for SEGA, although I don't anymore, and I'm in no way being paid for this review, so this is a genuine endorsement of sorts anyway. One of the best ways to play Mega Drive games is with the Mega Drive and Genesis Hub on Steam. Despite the confusion from a lot of press outlets at the time, Sega has not released a bunch of Mega Drive games to play for free. However, what they have done is released a hub for free, which acts as a front end for the Mega Drive games that you have purchased through Steam. It emulates a typical kid's bedroom from the 90s, with all of your games lined up on a shelf, which then has a little cutscene of the game being dropped into a console and then simulates the effect of a CRT TV. As an ex-employee, I have all of the games, except I did have to buy Sonic 1 for myself for some reason. I wonder how many times I've bought Sonic 1 now. To make the experience a little bit more authentic, you can either plug in an original controller via a USB adapter, which if you've played Sonic Mania at any show recently, you'll have been using one of these, or Sega even developed their own USB retro controller, which is a sort of Mega Drive Saturn mix. Not only that, but with the inclusion of Steam Workshop, it meant that ROM hacks started appearing. Some of these I'm sure have had to be removed for obvious reasons, but then it essentially legitimized those non-copyright infringing ROM hacks. There is, however, the cost of paying a few quid for each game individually. So what's the best way to play them then? Well, if I'm honest, the best way is probably to actually get a real Mega Drive. There are places out there that'll even do a simple 50 to 60 Hz mods on them so that they can play Genesis and Mega Drive games, Japanese Mega Drive games that is. There are plenty of retro throwback consoles, and there are many classic collections available as well, some of which are great and arguably the best option for a nostalgia trip. If you already have the hardware to play them, that is. There is some merit to modern versions of these games, but one thing is for sure, I'd give this one a miss. Well, that's it. After all that, the best way to play Mega Drive games is on an actual Mega Drive. Who'd have thunk? Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you'll excuse me, I'm going to have to go to return that awful excuse for a retro console.